today's video, we're going to be taking a look at Anakin Skywalker, based upon his appearance from Attack of the Clones for the Black Series 3 and 3/4 inch line. So if you've been following the channel for a little while now, you would recall that I did do this particular figure for the Vintage Collection release, which is actually right here. But since I've been doing a lot of the Black Series 3 and 3/4 inch figures recently, I thought that, to complete the numbering system, I think this particular Anakin deserves his own video. And it's a great action figure. I still think it's the best Attack of the Clones Anakin we've gotten to date from Hasbro. I've touched on it a little bit in the review for this video, but I think for the purposes of this video, we'll go ahead and give this one more of the emphasis. Just kind of use this as like the secondary reference piece. But still, compared to both action figures, I think this one still holds up really well. And it's usually pretty affordable on the aftermarket. If you recall back in 2013 and 14, and even into 15, he peg warmed heavily. He was repacked and then repacked again, and I think he may have been multiples per case. So he lingered for quite a while. I recall seeing this a year and a half, 2 years later at retail, and multiples of him. It took a long time for it to clear out. Which is, despite it being a good action figure, a lot of people, when it comes to main characters, just need one of the main character. And I think most people, when they get an Anakin action figure, if they're only going to get one, they probably prefer a Revenge of the Sith figure. So unfortunately, this one probably was overproduced, and it was exceeding the demand of the market, basically. We'll just go ahead and take a closer look at him. He was originally released as figure number 3 in the black and orange package. Unfortunately, I don't have the package here anymore. I actually didn't get this one until about 2016 or 17, and I got him on eBay for like $10. So that tells you how affordable he's been over the years. I imagine, even though it's been 7 or 8 years now since I've gotten this, it probably hasn't changed much. So for the head sculpt, I think this head sculpt is still really good. It's not 100% perfect to Hayden, and I think that's mostly in the hair here. The shape of it's just a little odd, I think. Maybe a little bit off, but if you look at him straight on and even at certain angles, I can definitely see Hayden Christensen as Anakin here. And even with the painted face, I have heard some scenarios from people where sometimes it's hit or miss, where maybe the eyes are blotchy, or maybe it just didn't come out 100%. I think the sample I have here turned out really good. And I would argue, compared to the TVC one here, I wouldn't necessarily say it's better, but there's really not a significant enough difference between the photoreal face here and the painted face to really matter for the average person, I suppose. I can't really say one is better than the other. Sure, this one looks a little more flesh-like compared to the Black Series figure here, but this one's good enough, I think. And as far as body here, I think the tooling turned out pretty good. Looks exactly like Anakin. As far as his robes are concerned, it's pretty spot on to what we see of Anakin in Attack of the Clones. I think it is a little bit lighter shade of color compared to the TVC figure here. The colors are definitely more vibrant on this one, especially with the brown for his tunic. But I don't think that's really a problem for this figure. He has the soft goods skirt underneath. Gives him the extra mobility. And for his boots here. So in terms of the articulation, he did have a ball joint to head, then hinged shoulders, which has a really good range of motion despite his part of his tunic here overlapping over his arm. That's still a pretty good range. He does have hinged at the elbows, and swivel wrists, swivel waist, but he does have hinged hips, which even back in 2013, this was still kind of a rare thing, and it was a big deal for an action figure to have that. And he does have hinged knees, and then a very innovative feature about it was the rocker ankles, which we rarely saw on any action figures at this time. This Anakin may have been... It was probably one of the first 10 action figures that Hasbro produced that had rocker ankles. Leading up to this, I know the Clone Wars Mace Windu had it. Same with Phase 2 Commander Cody in the Clone Wars line. And I'm trying to think what other ones had rocker ankles. I don't know if any of the TVC ones had, or none that I can think of off the top of my head at least. But this was definitely one of the first ones, and it was a big deal at the time. And unfortunately, it still took several more years for it to really catch on. So I suppose one of the drawbacks about this action figure is Hasbro did not include his accurate lightsaber hilt. They just gave him his standard Revenge of the Sith one, while they did correct it for the Vintage Collection figure here. You can see that one's more accurate to Attack of the Clones. And on top of that, for this release, Hasbro did give him an unignited hilt, while in this one they did not. But there is a hole on his belt where you can plug a lightsaber, which I usually do have one stored right here. It fits into place pretty good. Of course, this one's not accurate either, but for consistency with this. And this Black Series figure did not have the robes, which I don't think is really a big deal because I didn't really like how these robes turned out for this figure anyway. I think Hasbro could have done a much better job. It would have been nice if he had a robe of some sorts, but it's not that big of a deal. You could say this is like his duel on Geonosis, I guess, in the arena and with Count Dooku. Then he did include his robotic hand, which as far as I could tell between the TVC one and this one, I don't think there was really any difference between the robotic hands at all. I think one was just ever so slightly more vibrant in color compared to the other, and I honestly can't tell which one's which. So I don't even know if this one is particularly the TVC or the Black Series figures. But it is easy enough to swap his hands. There's a pretty big wrist there, actually. Then just plug that in. And you can get him to hold the lightsaber with his robotic hand. So you can treat this as kind of like a post-Attack of the Clones Anakin. Maybe what we see in the Star Wars The Clone Wars video game back in 2003 or 4, I think it was. Use him for dioramas from that game, where Anakin ends up meeting Ulit Keldroma. One other thing I will mention is, allegedly there is a variant of this action figure at the time, specifically the Black Series one. Some of them had lighter color hair and some of them had darker color hair. And I honestly can't tell which one's which. I suppose mine looks a little bit more on the lighter side. Not really a big deal of a variant, just something to note. And one more close up here between the two action figures. About 9 years of difference between the two. And honestly, I can't say one's really better than the other. They're both solid action figures to this date. Then we'll go ahead and bring out his future wife, Padme, and they look really good together. Can reenact that scene where they say, he called this a diplomatic solution, and then, no, I call it aggressive negotiations. But other than that, that's all I can really tell you about this Anakin. So would I recommend them for your collection? I would recommend either or. Whichever one is easier for you to get a hold of. Again, I don't think one is really better than the other between the two. It just comes down to whichever you prefer. I mean, I honestly can't say if I had to select only one for the collection. It'd be a very hard choice to make. Because the photoreal doesn't really do a whole lot for this action figure. It's not bad at all, but it really doesn't enhance the figure in any way. And this one's perfectly fine as it is. And like I said, in my opinion, I still think it's the best Attack of the Clones Anakin we've gotten to date. And it's looking like it's probably going to be staying that way, at least for a long time. So if you really want a Episode 2 Anakin, this is the one to get. Whichever one you prefer and which one's in your budget, they're both really affordable, I think. In fact, I've been seeing a lot of posts that people are finding this one at clearance at Ross and places like that. So probably like $4 or £4, whatever it is, no matter which country you're in. Or if you're in the EU at all, I still think it's usually in that 4, 5, 6 range, even if you find it on clearance. But even this Black Series one here, I usually find in the $10 to $20 range on eBay. And I doubt it's much different in other countries as well. So whichever you prefer, but it's a solid action figure all around still. But anyways, that concludes this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for plenty more reviews in the future. There will always be lots more to come. If you haven't already, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I always greatly appreciate all your support. Check out some links in the description if you have not done so already. And as always, thanks for watching.